Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Ruby, this is Ruby Red, and today we're playing Bailey's game, Jokes on Me. Yeah, I almost said TikTok TBR. Wow, no, we're playing Jokes on Me. This is the board. This is Bailey's TBR game. She created, and I was honored to be able to make the board for her, and this is the like revamped edition. This is actually this one is slightly different than hers. Basically, I have really been enjoying my physical reading lately. I have been avoiding my Kindle, and I have not been making like very much use of Libby. Like, I've really just been in my like reading my books kind of era right now. I've been reading a lot of physical library books, but I love this game and I want to play it. So I'm playing basically how Bailey plays, which is that I use this game to tell me which books off of my owned TBR to read. And for me, that means these books, mostly. I've read a few of these, mostly these books, and any of my arcs. And I think the total number there is like, it's like around 40 books. So I want to read these books, and I'm going to use this game to do it. I'm going to play the same way Bailey does, where I move around the board by picking cards. And I'm gonna pull 3 cards per episode and then also add in a my choice. I do have the one additional rule for myself, which is that I can read 1 library book per episode. So I can either use the my choice book to read like any book from my library, or I can fulfill some of the prompts. There's some wiggle room, in my opinion, to pick a library book. And then if I do that, my choice book has to be for myself. I don't know how many rounds I'm anticipating playing this, but I want to do at least a full round. So here's the first one. Let me actually just show you the changes I've made to the board though. I went in and because I had the files, I just made some tweaks. So the prompts that I changed are in a different color. So I changed the readathon prompts, which Bailey uses for like earning readathon weeks off her game. I'm not doing that. So I just changed 2 of them to 2024 reading challenge, because I have a few challenges this year I'm working on. And then I changed 2 other prompts to 30 by 30. I made Chris pick, Connor pick, book of the month. Like, I don't have book of the month, so that one's just gifted. And like the Instagram scroll prompt I changed because I'm not on Bookstagram really, so I wouldn't be able to do that one. So yeah, any of the prompts in a different color are not Bailey's original prompts, but I tried to keep them pretty close to the original prompt. Anyway, yeah, let's draw the cards. Okay, here we are. I have my shuffled deck of cards, and I have my little guy. I'm gonna start in this corner. We'll see how that goes. Okay, 3 cards. First card, 6. Okay, so I do 3 and 3. 3, a physical, 1, 2, 3, random letter. Wait, I should be writing this down. Okay, our next card is a 9. I just moved 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Longest book. That is so classic, typical, standard, and I'm so scared. Okay, our third card is a 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Friend pick. Okay. And then I get a my choice also. Let's see what I'm gonna read. Okay, for physical book, that just means it's one of my owned books that's on my shelf. And I've decided to pick The River of No Return by Ridgway. Sorry. I have read almost half of this, and I'm gonna finish it for this Jokes on Me episode, because I started this actually in January, and then I just had to put it on hold because I had some books that I was reading for like book clubs that were just too similar in vibe to this. So I was just like not able to just read so many like semi-whimsical historical fiction books at once. But I'm ready now to get back and finish this because I was really enjoying it. It's a time travel book. Okay, love. The next prompt was random letter, and between doing my card flips and sitting down to film this, I did take a walk and a shower, which is why I'm all wet. But on the walk, I was telling Connor about my picks, and Connor was like, oh, I'll give you a random letter right now. W. So that's our letter. And that's actually perfect because another book I'm in the middle of is We Are the Weather by Jonathan Safran Foer. This is a book I'm reading as part of my Buzzword nonfiction challenge this year. And this is the April book, and it's almost the end of April, and I haven't finished it yet, so this is going onto the TBR for this video as well. I hope nobody cares that I'm picking books I've already started, because if we wait for a time when I'm not already, like, in the middle of any books, we'll never start. Okay, next, longest book. This scared me because I know what the longest book on my TBR is. Here's the screenshot of my Goodreads shelf, because this includes my arcs, and I did go in and double check the page numbers for my arcs, because sometimes when you add them they have 0 pages. Anyway, and Bailey sometimes picks not necessarily the absolute first one. She can choose within the top couple of options, so I did decide to choose Damnation Spring by Ash Davidson, which is one of the first arcs that I ever got. And I think it was already published when I got the arc, and I just never read it because I was like, well, that one's already published, so I don't know. But I think that is a piece of climate fiction, so I've been reading kind of a lot of that recently. I really like it, and I'm excited to finally read this book that came out in like 2021. Oops. Okay, now we have friend pick, and obviously I asked Bailey to pick me a book for my TBR, and I haven't looked yet at which book she chose for me, because I just want to say I think she's gonna pick The Stranger Beside Me by Anne Rule. That's my guess, which is one of my other longest books. And actually, yeah, it's right here. This is my guess. Okay, while I'm waiting for Bailey to get back to me, I will tell you my choice pick, which is a library book, and it's Brotherless Night. This is the final book that I have to read for the Carol Shields Prize for Fiction. I've decided to read the shortlist for that prize, and this is the last one. So this is my choice, and I am excited to start it because this is the only book from the Carol Shields long list that was also on the Women's Prize for Fiction long list. If you're like up on your literary awards for women, this made both lists, which I think is like exciting, and Lizzie already read this and really liked it, so I'm excited to read it. And I did already check out Damnation Spring as an audiobook, so because I needed an audiobook today, that's why I'm doing this while I'm all wet. Okay, yeah. Bailey has picked The Stranger Beside Me. We all knew she would, so this is fine. I'm gonna get 2 of the longest books on my TBR read in this episode, and 2 books that I've been currently reading for a while are also gonna get read, and I'm gonna finish my Carol Shields project and get an arc off the table. So really, I think this is a good selection of books. Here's most of it. I don't have the arc, but this is what I'm gonna be reading for this episode. Wish me luck. Hi, I wanted to talk about The River of No Return before I dive back into it, because as I think I said, I started this book in January and I had to put it down because there were just so many other books that I was reading for like time sensitive reasons that had a very similar tone and themes and even character names. So River of No Return is a time travel book, and it starts in, shoot, I just checked, I think it starts in 1815. We meet Nicholas very briefly because he is about to die. He's fighting a battle, and right before his death he jumps forward in time and he wakes up in like 2003 or something. And this is just a thing that happens. So there's an organization called the Guild that is dedicated to collecting these time travelers and bringing them to this like compound where they live for 2 years and they learn how to live in their current time. They learn pop culture, technology, how to drive, a new language maybe, and you know, because there's no going back. You would forward in time, you can't go back, that's it. So here's how you can survive now. And they have somehow lots of money, and they set these time travelers up with a big bank account and a new identity and educate them, and off they go. So our main character, Nick, he used to be Nicholas, now he's Nick, lives in Vermont. He runs like a raw cheese farm and then he gets summoned by the guild because actually you can go back and they need him to, because something, oh my god, is that a bald eagle? That's literally a bald eagle flying right over my yard. Hello. Good morning, America. Wow, sorry I couldn't share that with you. Anyway, Nick is being called to go back into his original time, like only a few years after his death, because there's some threat to the guilds. Maybe it's another time travel group, I don't really remember, and he is in a place where he can like get them an in to like figure out what's going on with this guy. I stopped reading it in February, so that's kind of all I remember, but I did love the scene when he first arrived in the modern era and was like being re-educated. I thought that was all very like interesting and fun, and then there was additionally a really fun reaction when he goes back in time to like remembering, like sense memory of like all these different things. I don't know, I'm always wanting to read a time travel book where somebody travels forward in time into our time, because of that. Like, what's the reaction? What do you think of like what's going on? I don't know, I'm just interested in that as a plot device, and I've never read it before, so here we are. Also, actually, this is a great time to point out that if you didn't notice when I was picking my books, my longest books screenshot, sure, Bailey's pick was up there, and yes, I picked a long book for my longest book. Then there's A Little Life, and then the fourth book that is in that top 4 longest books I have on my own TBR is River of No Return. So I'm going to be knocking off 3 of my longest books in this one video. That's kind of exciting. All right, I have finished The River of No Return, and I really enjoyed this book. I'm sad that I took so long to read it. Like, I think obviously I probably would have enjoyed myself overall more had I read it straight through instead of taking months. But when I did pick it back up, yeah, come on up. When I did pick it back up, I was able to dive right back into the story, and I flew through the last like 250 pages of this that I had to read. I ate it up. One thing is that I felt like as we were nearing the end, I was becoming more and more concerned, because I was like, there's no way you're going to solve all the things that need solving in the last 4 pages. Like, it's just not happening. And in fact, as we were nearing the end, like more things were coming up that I was like, we don't need new problems. We need to solve the old problems. And they didn't get resolved in the last 4 pages. Not to spoil anything specific. Some things, I suppose, are resolved, but there are some things that are really unanswered questions. And Carbon, are you just licking the bedspread? So if that's something that you hate in books, I feel like that's something that can be pretty divisive. So for me, I wasn't mad about it. I kind of like it. I'm very intrigued, and I'm going to be thinking about this book for a while, which is something, I think. But I know that like maybe don't pick this up if that's something that would make you unhappy. I did really like it. I would like to read more from this author because the writing was so good. Like, I just like got sucked into the story so quickly. I loved Nick, our sweet, sweet Nick, and so many of the other characters. There's so many like twists and turns, and there's a love story as well that I liked. So yeah, good book. One of my longest books done. Nice. Okay, I'm about to head out and run some errands, but first I just wanted to wrap up We Are the Weather while I've got some quiet time in my car. I guess I did mean to give you a like pre-finishing opinion, but honestly I was way closer to the end than I thought, and you're just getting my final thoughts. I've been struggling to figure out how to say exactly what I want to say about this book is the other thing, because I think it was really good actually, and I do recommend it to anybody who's on the fence or like unclear about what they can do for the climate crisis, there's a lot you can do, but one thing that you can do that will have a really big impact is to eat less or no animal products. And this book is a whole investigation of like, are you sure that's gonna help? Are you sure that's, you know, worth doing? You know, isn't that gonna be really hard? Isn't that gonna be inconvenient? Etc., etc. Like, the author is struggling with all these arguments himself, and so I feel like it could be very approachable because he's right there with you if you're struggling, or if you're not convinced, or if you, whatever. Really very interesting. He talked about a lot of different aspects of the climate crisis and animal agriculture, and the interconnectedness of all things, I guess, is a big thing for talking about the climate crisis and mitigating the climate crisis. And he also relates it to several other events in history where collective action was needed. And, you know, he is very clear about how collective action is not the only solution, but it is part of the solution. So it's not like your individual choices are the only thing that like needs to happen, but they are a thing that needs to happen. So I do really recommend this book. I'm going to pass my copy along to somebody else to read, but I'm not going to rate it on Goodreads because I didn't like it for me. Because as somebody who has been vegan for 9 years, I have not eaten any animal products for 9 years. Because of this, I felt like I'm so not the target audience, because he's talking about, you know, I know it's really hard to make these changes, etc. And for me, it wasn't hard. So that's kind of like the end of my review, is that that wasn't my experience. And I know that that is most people's experience. I understand, like, I know that everyone's got their own thing, and I'm not coming at anyone for that, but it just, like, for me personally, did not resonate because, yeah, just not relatable. Yeah, pretty much all I did by reading this book was, well, one thing that I did want to do, or I wanted to get out of it, was more talking points, because I've found myself more recently, like, steering conversations away from food, avoiding talking about being vegan and animal agriculture's impact on the planet and the climate crisis. And I didn't really like that I was doing that. It seems like not in alignment with my general beliefs. So I wanted to read this and hopefully give myself a little bit more confidence talking about these issues, and just like remind myself of how important it is, which it did do. And I definitely do have some new ways of talking about it, new like talking points and examples and like comparisons to make. So that was helpful to me. But yeah, if you are already somebody who eats a plant-based or mostly plant-based diet, I don't recommend this book because you'll probably be frustrated. But for everybody else, I do recommend this book because we all live on this planet together, and I think we all want to keep living on this planet. Anyway, yeah, I think this is a great approachable book, but it wasn't for me. So I'm glad I'm done with it, and I can't wait to pass it along to somebody who it might make a difference to. I just woke up. I'm really fluffy, but I'm here to talk about Damnation Spring because I've been getting through it pretty fast. So I want to talk about my like initial impressions before I get to the end, you know what I mean? So the book is told from 3 perspectives. We have Colleen and her husband Rich and their son Chub. And the book is set in 70s in Northern California, in redwood country, in logging country. It's a logging book. So Rich works for the logging company, like his father and grandfather before him. And it's a logging town. Like the clinic is run by the company. Like everybody comes to the company, you know, dinner. Everybody's house is like owned by the company. So first off, we have Rich, who, well, how does this always happen? Carbon is pushing the camera. Oh, can we do this? Hi. Oh, sorry if it's a mess back there. Rich is just at the very beginning, he takes out a huge loan to buy a tract of land that is virgin forest land. It's never been logged, and it has like one of the biggest, it has the biggest tree around, like, that anybody's ever seen. It's like, it's an infamous tree because it's just so huge. And he like lucks out in somebody wanting to sell him this, but then he takes out like a huge loan, and he does not tell his wife, which I'm sure is gonna somehow come back and bite us in the butt, you know, because why wouldn't it? And his wife is really struggling right now because she recently had a pretty late term miscarriage, and she's had a bunch before. She's had a lot of miscarriages, and there are also, within this community, we start hearing about some other like birth issues. So sort of seems like something's not right. And then we met this scientist who was like he's testing the water. He's like, something's up with the fish. I don't know. So I'm thinking Damnation Spring probably has something in it that is causing problems, in like fertility and birth problems. And I think it's probably going to be revealed to us eventually that is because of the logging company, who is making wide use of a variety of herbicides, which they keep mentioning. So like, they keep talking about how they're spraying this, spraying that. So I'm like, it's probably in the water, right? And that's what's causing all this. So I think we're going to have some sort of like big expose around that. But meanwhile, this couple is really struggling, with their marriage already because of the loss of that pregnancy. And then now we have this secret loan. That's what's going on. That's what we're dealing with. That's my sort of thoughts about where I think that this story is going to go. I also wanted to try to be brief here, but we'll see. I also just wanted to mention something that I think is really good and cool about reading, and that is important and that I value, which is reading perspectives that differ from my own, characters who have different worldviews and like, you know, thoughts on things. So obviously, like, I'm out here, I'm a tree hugger, and these are loggers. And while I know, obviously, logging, huge industry, and also like wood, we use wood for a lot of things, like we need wood. We can't just stop logging. But it's just like I'm getting to read Rich's deep like love and respect for these woods and these trees, but to him, he feels that way about them and what they can, you know, how many board feet they can make, right? He's now owns the land on which the biggest tree anybody's ever seen is growing on, and he's like, it's gonna be such an honor to be the one to cut that down. And I'm like, I think it would be such an honor to be the one to not cut that down and let it keep growing and get bigger. And like, what, you know? So that's like foreign concept to me, emotionally, although intellectually, of course, I do understand that like this is his entire livelihood. It's the whole town, like I was saying. So I do kind of suspect he maybe is gonna not cut it down in the end, just because I feel like that would be good for the story. But I think it's good for me to read characters who I'm like, I don't understand how you could do that. And I guess this is sort of helping me understand it, you know? But I wish he wouldn't do it. So that's Damnation Spring. I really like the audiobook too. There's 3 different narrators for the 3 character POVs. I don't like the child's narrator, but that's to be expected, you know? So I'll be back. Okay, I finished Damnation Spring, and I thought, what better place to talk to you about it than in the woods. So I'm heading over to a bench that may or may not be dry enough for me to sit on, and I'm going to talk to you about it. I thought it was really good. I am pretty annoyed with myself that I took so long to read it, because it really was so good. All right, this rock is only a little bit wet. It was about all the things that I talked about before. I think one error I might have made is that I called it climate fiction, or I've been thinking about it as climate fiction, but really I think it's more accurately described as eco-fiction, because it's not about climate change or climate disaster. It's about ecological change and ecological disaster. It definitely got into topics around pollution, like pesticides, herbicides, logging, like ethics of all of that, and the like who pays the price and who reaps the rewards of that. Aside from the eco-fiction, this book I think was very much about loss. I mentioned loss of pregnancy. There's also stuff happening related to the loss of a loved one, loss of friendships, loss of opportunities, loss of like life paths that you thought were open to you and maybe now aren't, and loss of security and loss of like trust in people around you. There's just a lot going on. A lot of things were lost, but many things were found as well. And I think overall the story rounded out really well, and the ending was very emotional for me, and life goes on, so yeah, loved this book. I guess the ending wasn't like the most clear-cut, neatly tied bow, but I like that in a book, so I liked it. And those are my thoughts about Damnation Spring. I'm so glad I finally read it, and thank you for joining me here in the woods. Not as lovely as the redwood forest, but not bad, I don't think. Wow. Can't believe I finally read that book after so many years. Okay, today I started The Stranger Beside Me by Anne Rule, and I read 100 pages of it, and I'm gonna keep reading it because this is really quite good. I knew the basics of this, which is that Anne Rule knew Ted Bundy before he became a serial killer, but I didn't really know how much she was like in the perfect position to be the person to write about him. And like, did she help solve this case? I can't wait to find out, because it seems like she was perfectly positioned to be working with police like all around the state, writing, and also she knew him very well. Like, they were quite close. They advised one another on personal matters. Like, wow, very scary stuff. That's all. I thought I would wait until I had read like half of it or something to offer some thoughts, but I can't wait. This book is so good. Hi, I'm here to update you about The Stranger Beside Me by Anne Rule. I am about halfway through this book, like about, not quite even, and I'm really enjoying it. It reads very, very well. It's a delightful reading experience, although obviously it contains within its pages tragedies, tragedy upon tragedy, horrible crimes committed against young women who, were being nice. For the most part, they were just being nice to somebody who was like needed help or whatever. So yeah, that's awful, of course, but I do think Anne's approach to this is so interesting because of her connection to Ted before all of this like went down, and she's been contracted to write a book about the murders in Washington that sort of spread to Utah and then Colorado. She has the contract to write that book, and she's working on that book this whole time before like Ted is even an official suspect. And in fact, she is one of the people who mentions Ted to police because of some of the descriptions and some other stuff. Like, a few people around him, women, spoke up about, hey, like, my friend Ted, like, he was there that weekend and he kind of looks like that, or he has that car or whatever. So that's really interesting. And also just the way that he just like charmed everybody. Everybody just things just fall into place for him because he's friendly and charismatic, and he can get a really good read on people and manipulate them. And Anne sort of talks about that, how he's got these two women who are so in love with him and will help him with anything while he's in prison, for one attempted kidnapping charge, and he's awaiting trial for some other charges. And the way that he manipulates those two women, and there have been a few times where Anne mentions that, like, he seems to always be able to get women to do whatever for him because he just, like, is so friendly or something. And there are also a few instances where it's like he's doing his ruse of pretending to be, you know, he has crutches, he needs help carrying something. Oh, could you help me get this to my car? And a young, pretty girl who is nice will say, oh, sure, of course, like, he's a handsome man, he's not a criminal, and helps him do whatever, and then gets kidnapped. But there are a few instances of girls coming forward saying, yeah, I saw a guy on crutches, he, you know, was asking me to, like, help him with something, but, like, I didn't like his vibe. Like, there's a few women who it doesn't work on, which I am interested in that. Because, like, what is it? Is it just, like, are those girls just, like, less trustful, or is it, like, I don't know. Anyway, it's awful, but he just, like, it's so weird to get this chronology of heinous crimes and then him writing these goofy letters to Anne herself, who is eventually going to write the book all about everything that he did. Like, it's so wild. And he knows she's writing the book. He knows she's close with all the police. And so when they ask her for something, she's like, well, let me ask Ted. They ask to see the letters he sends her. And she's like, well, let me ask Ted. And Ted's like, yeah, sure, show them. Like, I don't have anything to hide. He's so... Anyway, I think there is a reason. I'm understanding the reason that this is such a prime example, a good example of good true crime writing, because while certainly she is deeply humanizing Ted by having this, like, close personal relationship with him, there's also, like, people who commit mass murder and serial killers, like, are humans. And I think exposing that aspect of the criminal situation, like, it's not just about, like, his mood swings, or about, like, the, like, twisted things that he did, like, the cruelty. It's about, like, he was a guy. Like, that's the scary part. And I think her perspective is, I don't know, doing a good job of showing that. So I really like reading it. The chapters are, for the most part, pretty short, so it moves kind of fast. And there's just, like, so much going on, and she organizes all of this, like, criminal trials, the multiple police forces and everything. Like, she organizes it very well in a very, like, approachable narrative, which is something that I love in a good true crime. It's readable and horrifying, so I'm gonna keep reading it. All right, I finished The Stranger Beside Me. This was such a long book. I knew it was long going into it, and now that I've read the whole thing, I can say that it was very long. It was very good also. I think actually it was excellent. I think it deserves its place as being, like, regarded as one of the best, like, true crime books or whatever, because I do think it was really good. And it's just, her perspective on the whole thing was interesting, but it's a shocking and horrendous story, and I think it was really important for her to be the one to share it, as somebody who was close to Ted, to really, like, show that, like, you can't always tell and, like, everyone is dangerous. It's just, like, at the time, criminals, especially, like, sexual criminals, were thought of in a certain way, and nobody thought that, like, a handsome, charming man could be a sexual predator and a serial killer, and that's simply not the case. It doesn't have actually anything to do with it. So in that way, I think this book was very important, and her view and her knowledge of Ted and how he presented himself to certain people in his life at different times, like, I think that was, like, an important aspect to show of the whole thing. I think she was appropriately grave also. Like, there's no, obviously no fanaticism, but she talks about the women who contact her who are like, oh, I'm in love with Ted, like he's just like, you know, oh, he's so handsome, like I can't believe what they're doing to him or whatever. And she, according to her, like always sort of tries to set them straight, like, no, you're not. Like, he committed horrific acts of violence against women who look just like you, and you shouldn't be into that. There's nothing to be into. It's really dangerous, really bad. So I think her perspective and her stance was good. She's not really into the side of true crime that I think sort of has come about. I don't know, people have always been obsessed with crime. So I really like this book, is where I'm going to end it, I guess. Yeah, so thanks, Bailey, for picking this for me. It did take me so long to read, even though I had 2 of my other longest books on this list. But that's that. Moving on. Okay, here we are with the My Choice book, Brotherless Night. I really thought that I had done a like middle of the book update, but there's no evidence of that in my camera roll. So I finished it. I loved it. And I talked about it in my Carol Shields video that has already gone up. So if you saw that, you already heard what I have to say. 5 stars, 10 out of 10, amazing book. I'm not going to say it all again. You can go watch that video where I talk about a bunch of other great books. We're going to just call it. Great choice, me, on the My Choice there. Fantastic book. All right, that's a wrap on episode 1 of round 2, Jokes on Me, Bailey's TBR game. Bailey, as always, thank you so much for making this game. It's so fun and perfect. And I hope that I'm going to see you back here sometime soon for another video. It's probably gonna be another jokes video that I post next, so lucky you. All right, see you then. Bye.